Welcome back to another episode of The Road Chose Me. And today I'm going to pick up right where I left off, reviewing different sleeping setups for when you're out overlanding. So last time we ran through a ground tent and sleeping inside your vehicle, and we went through the pros and cons of each. Today I'm going to talk about rooftop tents and an integrated pop-up roof like I have. So let's not waste any more time and get right into it. So there's no doubt that rooftop tents have become the ultimate overland accessory right now in North America. And it's become one of those things that people say, if you don't have a rooftop tent, you're not an overlander. And like I said last time, that's pretty much nonsense. But rooftop tents, they have been a staple of overlanding for a long time. Invented mostly in South Africa and Australia, people really like them because they get you up off the ground and you get more of a cool breeze when you're camping in really hot climates. You're also off the ground, away from the creepy crawlies and all the nasty animals that might want to chomp you while you're asleep. So what is a rooftop tent? I mean, as it sounds, it is a tent that is on the roof of your vehicle. It is nothing more than that, and it is nothing less than that. So how do you go about getting one? Well, firstly, you're going to have a good sturdy roof rack. Remember, all of your weight plus the weight of the tent is going to be on the rack. So this is not something you want to skimp on, and you're going to spend at least $1,000, maybe close to $2,000 to get a good sturdy roof rack. From there, you're going to add a rooftop tent. And there's so many different brands and varieties these days, and there's all different types. Whether they're a clamshell, where they kind of just open like this, and the hard part of the roof is still above the canvas sides, or the more common variety is they flip right open like this and the entire tent is canvas. Those are both options. They both have pros and cons. They both work. And I don't have a rooftop tent here with me right now to show you. So what I'm gonna do is show you photos from my friend's epic family road trip. So they've got a YouTube channel, they're on Instagram, and they're a family of 5 traveling full time in their 2 Jeeps, and they've got a rooftop tent on each Jeep. I also met tons of people across Africa using rooftop tents, so they are really very common. So as I said, advantages: you're up off the ground, away from the creepy crawlies, you're out of the mud, and you get the cross breeze. So on a really hot night, it's kind of impressive how much cooler it is sleeping up there rather than down on the ground. Another big advantage is rooftop tents, they can be quite spacious, especially the ones that fold right over. You end up with a large space inside. A lot of them you can sit up quite easily to change your clothes, easily enough room for 2 people. You can even get them big enough for 4 people if you want to go that way. So even if you have just like an SUV style 4-wheel drive, you can put a rooftop tent on the top of it that significantly increases kind of your sleeping area or your hangout area. Another nice advantage is they usually have some sort of built-in mattress system, which often is quite thick and comfortable, so you end up with a really cozy bed up there. So rooftop tents, they definitely have their place and they can be really good. They also have quite a few downsides though, which I feel like doesn't get talked about all that often. So the first one that I can think of is, like I said, it's nothing more than a tent on top of your vehicle. It's not connected to the vehicle. You can't pass from the inside to the outside. You don't have electricity going there. You can't get things out of your fridge, nothing like that. So it has the same kinds of downsides as a ground tent. You will have to go outside into the rain, into the mud, every time you want to go from the tent to your vehicle or back again. So you're out in the elements. Also, for a lot of rooftop tents, you can't leave your sleeping gear up there. There just isn't enough room to fit it in. So your pillows, your sleeping bag, anything like books or whatever else you've got up there for comfort, every single day, you're going to have to bring those down and put them inside your vehicle. First of all, that means you're bringing them through the weather. If it's pouring rain, yes, they're going to get wet. And secondly, you have to find somewhere to store them inside your car. So again, you're just taking up precious storage space, and soon enough you'll figure out that those things are really bulky and they take up a lot of space. The other huge downside is you have an enormous amount of weight up really high on your vehicle. So your roof rack already adds quite a bit of weight and height, and then rooftop tents are notoriously tall, and so you're increasing the overall height of your vehicle. So in terms of, going down narrow trails or under low things, but also that amount of weight up that high, it significantly impacts how your vehicle handles when you're driving on rough roads or when you're off-roading. A top-heavy vehicle is far, far from ideal, and it's something that a lot of people complain about. And in fact, they stay away from rooftop tents because they don't want to compromise their off-roading ability like that. Not only does it compromise off-road ability, you're adding a huge amount of wind resistance to your frontal area on your vehicle, having that massive tent up there. So your gas mileage is without a doubt going to get worse, which means your expedition now costs more money. Rooftop tents are also quite expensive. They're a heavy investment and they don't last forever. I met a lot of people who, after living in them full time for 6 or 8 months in Africa, they basically had worn out their rooftop tent. Most of the cheaper ones, the hinge system winds up breaking after too many uses, the canvas is no longer waterproof or it gets holes in it, the zips stop closing properly. All of these things become problems when you try to live out of it full time. The only real solution to that is to buy a really expensive one, which is great, but it's really expensive. And probably the biggest downside that I've seen other people using rooftop tents is just how long they take to set up and tear down. So setup usually isn't too bad. Most of them you can push up in just a minute or two. And like I said, you bring all your sleeping gear in, and if it's not raining, that's not too painful. But the pack up time is what always staggered me whenever I camped with people with a rooftop tent in Africa. So I was shocked. It takes most people around 10 minutes to put their rooftop tent away. Someone has to climb up from the hood onto the roof rack. Usually one person is kind of tucking in canvas while another person sort of feeds up the ladder and the lid section. And it's a big tucking maneuver. You have to tighten straps and get it all tight. And then they usually have a cover that goes over the whole thing. And what I especially saw is that that cover gets insanely dusty and dirty, and with even a little bit of rain, it just turns into mud. And so the person who's up on the roof trying to put that cover back on, they literally wind up covered in mud. And definitely the clamshell rooftop tents, they improve on that. They don't have such a long pack up time, and usually you don't get covered in mud, but they are much more expensive is really their biggest downside. So certainly rooftop tents have become that must-have accessory, but don't by any stretch think that they're perfect, and don't by any stretch think that you have to have one to be an overlander. That doesn't make any sense at all. Get one if you think it's going to suit your needs, but don't get one if it doesn't. And then the final option that I'm going to talk about for your sleeping setup is an integrated pop-up roof like the one I have here. So lots of people confuse this and they think it's a rooftop tent. This thing is not a rooftop tent at all. Let me make that clear. Completely different. And this video, I'm not going to review the specific one I have. I'll do that in my next video. I'm going to make this generic to all pop-up roofs. So this is on a Jeep Wrangler, but there are companies who make a roof like this for a Toyota Land Cruiser. You can get roofs like this for many different vans. You know, this is what a Westfalia has. This is a really common kind of camping mod for a van that now is filtering into four-wheel drives as well. And lots of slide-in campers now have sort of look like this, or there's the Go Fast camper and all of those various ones on the back of a pickup bed, which is essentially this same idea. So it's a hard roof that can be closed when you're driving, and then when you pop it open like this, you wind up with canvas sides and it's kind of on a slope. They're all relatively the same idea. And the reason they're so amazing is because you wind up with the interior living space. So you're really killing two birds with one stone here. Not only do you get a big comfortable bed that's up off the ground, but you get this interior living space. So right there, that's the biggest pro of this setup. As well as that, big advantages is it's much lower profile than a rooftop tent. So there's no roof rack and then additional height. This particular one adds about 6 inches over a stock roof, which I think is common depending on the brand you get and which vehicle you have. And that way you're really not adding too much weight up high, and you're not going to ruin your gas mileage severely because you're really not adding that much more wind resistance. Another really big advantage here is that your bed and your sleeping area is basically inside the vehicle. So just like sleeping in the vehicle, you can move from the driver's seat to the sleeping area, you can get to your fridge, you can charge your equipment, you can pull out books, you can change clothes, all of that kind of stuff because you're inside the vehicle. But of course, with the roof open, you get way more space so you can actually stand up and walk around. The other thing that I love about this roof is how quick it is to set up and how easy it is to put down as well. And while I'm talking here, I'll show you, this is me setting the roof up. I literally just walk one lap around the roof, around the Jeep, and then push it up. And to close it, I just have to walk a lap as well to tuck in all of the canvas. But you can see it's about 20 seconds to put up and maybe about 40 seconds to put down. That's it. Another massive advantage is that I leave all of my sleeping stuff upstairs in the bed area. So at all times, there are 2 sleeping bags and 2 pillows up there. The mattresses are all laid out, they've got sheets on them. So after I've pushed the roof up, I can climb upstairs and be in bed in about 40 seconds, done and dusted. I don't have to move anything outside, there's no rain element to think about. It's all contained inside the roof. Another big advantage of this setup is that it doesn't take up any more footprint than the Jeep already does. So as long as I don't park under low trees, it doesn't really matter what's around me. I can be right next to trees, I can be in a puddle of water. It makes no difference to me because the roof just goes up. It doesn't come out to the side like a lot of rooftop tents do, so I don't need any additional flat area or area without trees or bushes. And this really becomes a thing when you spend years on the road looking for wild camping. It's nice to only have the footprint of the vehicle to worry about. Another big advantage is that the fiberglass roof, or the solid part of the roof, is always above you. So when it's thumping rain, and it will thump rain when you get near the equator, that adds a lot of waterproofness. And it also means that the canvas doesn't really get a lot of rain directly on it. You can see most of the rain hits the fiberglass and runs off, and just some maybe splashes on the canvas walls. The rain never is directly hitting the canvas. So again, that makes it like a much more long-term solution. And it doesn't even matter if I camp every single night in the thumping rain in this thing, I never get damp or wet inside. So in that regard, it's much more like a house in sort of how permanent and how solid and durable to the elements it is, compared to, you know, like a backpacking tent or even a cheap rooftop tent. Those things just aren't going to hold up to the conditions in the same way such kind of a big expensive modification is going to. So there's no doubt about it, this setup has a lot of advantages over some of the others, but it definitely has downsides as well. And without a question, the biggest downside is the expense. This is by far the most expensive way to go, and you're going to spend 2, 3, maybe 4 times as much money as you could on a rooftop tent and a roof rack, which is already 3 or 4 or 5 times more money than you're going to spend on a ground tent or a sheet of plywood to make a platform in the back of your vehicle. So no doubt about it, this is a really expensive way to go. The other big downside is that it's essentially a permanent or a very big modification to your vehicle. So you're investing all of this money into the one vehicle. And then let's say the vehicle gets damaged, or you want to go to a different continent, or any scenario where suddenly that particular vehicle doesn't make sense for you anymore. Well, that sleeping setup is tied to that vehicle and you've invested all that time and energy, but it can't really transfer to a different vehicle. So it really is like a permanent thing on the vehicle, not something like a ground tent you can just take with you into your next vehicle. So I hope that's been helpful. I hope running through the different sleeping setups and the different pros and cons gives you an idea, and it helps you realize that nothing is perfect, nothing is ideal for all occasions, for all people. They all have pros and cons. They're all different, and you need to figure out where you're going, with how many people, for how long, all of those questions we've been over before you can start thinking about which sleeping setup is going to best suit your needs and make sure that you're going to enjoy your trip. So I hope this has been helpful. Definitely let me know down in the comments if you've got any more questions or there's anything else you want me to run through. Very next video, I'm going to do an extremely detailed review of this particular pop-up roof that I've got on my Jeep Wrangler. I'm going to answer every question you've ever had about it, and it'll be a big video. So besides that, let me know if you've got questions about sleeping setups in general for overlanding. So if it's been helpful, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hopefully you can get out on adventures. Until next time, maybe I'll bump into you on the road.